I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I want to thank Bob Lambert for reminding me to say the pledge. I was remiss. Robert's rules will be the rules of order for this meeting. Only legal voters of the town of Plymouth, Vermont, who are present may speak and vote on articles at this meeting. All motions and remarks should be addressed to the moderator, that's me. Please stand to be recognized and state your name clearly. If what you think is important, please speak into the mic so we can all hear you. All motions must be made and seconded. A motion can be amended and that amendment amended once. Each person will get one chance to speak on any debate before anyone can speak a second time on any issue. I will allow one follow-up question in the case of a question answered by a town official, and I'm pretty liberal about the banter, but at some point you have to be considerate of your neighbors. No one may speak more than twice in debate on any question except being the select board answering questions. Please use the microphone so everyone can hear you, and let's get on with the meeting. Warning, the legal voters of the town of Plymouth, County of Windsor, State of Vermont are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Plymouth Municipal Building at 68 Town Office Road, Plymouth, Vermont on Monday, March 3rd, 2025 at 7 p.m. to transact at that time business not involving voting by Australian ballot or votes required by law by ballot. The polls will open Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 between the hours of 10 o'clock and 7 o'clock for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot. The business to be transacted will include Article 1, to elect town officers for the ensuing year by Australian ballot. Moderator, Lister, Selectman, Lister, Trustee of Public Funds, Cemetery Commissioner, and Constables. Article 2, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote by Australian ballot to eliminate the office of Lister and approve the select board to appoint an assessor. Article 3, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote $13,589.50 for human services to be allocated as follows. A, American Red Cross, $250. B, Black River Area Community Coalition, $500. C, Black River Good Neighbors, $500. D, Black River Valley Senior Center, $3,000. E, Fletcher Memorial Library, $1,200. F, Green Mountain Economic Development Corporation, $321.50. G, Green Up Vermont, $50. H, HCRS Mental Health Services, $568. J, Movers, $125. J, Okemo Valley TV, $800. K, Ataquiche Health Foundation, $600. L, Plymouth Historical Society, $500. And M, Plymouth Memory Tree, $250. N, Senior Solutions Council on Aging for Southeast Vermont, $300. O, Southeastern Vermont Community Action, $400. P, Tyson Library, $500. Q, Visiting Nurses, $2,150. R, Vermont Center for Independent Living, $175. And S, Vermont Rural Fire Protection Task Force, $200. T, Windsor County Mentors, $500. U, Windsor County Youth Services, $400. And finally, V, Women's Freedom Center, $300. Article 4, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to appropriate the sum of $2,500 to the Okemo Valley Technical Rescue Group to support emergency technical rescue services for the town of Plymouth. Article 5, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to raise $1,592,689.50 with an extra zero in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,999,739.50. Article 6, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will fix the salaries of the select board the same as last year in the amount of $1,600 annually. And Article 7, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will collect taxes on real property in installments, taxes to be paid to the treasurer, town of Plymouth, on September 2nd, 2025, and February 2nd, 2026, and must be delivered to the town treasurer on or before the due date. Postmarked envelopes and payments will not be accepted as timely payments. Dated at Plymouth, Vermont, the 13th day of January 2025. Town of Plymouth Select Board, Jay Coleman, Chairman, Richard Kaminsky, and Keith Capellini. Okay, Article 1 is going to be decided on by Australian ballot tomorrow. So we now have Article 2, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote by Australian ballot to eliminate the office of the listers and approve the select board to appoint an assessor. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Sorry, so we have motion and a second. Is there any discussion on Article 2? Is anybody for this article? Yes?
This is on the ballot for tomorrow. Not
Oh,
tonight.
okay, so this is not an article for the discussion at all?
No. Well, I
Well,
don't know if you want to discuss it.
We can discuss it.
okay, so if you want to talk about that, you talk about it during other business, not during anywhere else. Okay. That's a rule. Okay.
We can't discuss it?
Yes, you can, during other business, but it's not part of the budget. It's not on the table, it's not an Australian ballot article.
It's on the.
I mean, it's on here as an article. If there's no article on the table, you can't discuss it. But, you want to discuss it, let's talk about it. Who has an opinion on it?
I got an opinion, but I don't know if
So we're not voting that
I
tonight.
always have an opinion.
Okay,
No, we're,
wait, isn't this, no. This looks to me, I'm reading the article, if we're gonna see if we're gonna vote by Australian ballot. No?
No, it should be like one. It's on the ballot, like
Okay.
number one.
It's on the ballot, you decide tomorrow. But anytime you want to talk about anything, you can do that during other business at the end. And Bob, you can talk anytime. What do we need?
could anybody explain it to me?
That's what I'm saying.
Can anybody do that?
Who wants to go first? Okay, I'll go. So, there's two camps here. One camp which favors, and in theory, two different ideas. There are two schools of thought on the issue. One, we maintain as currently with a office of elected listers, whereby there are people that step up from the community, serve the community as they have for many years in the past, and fulfill the role of lister. The other school of thought says that we pursue a more professionalized path whereby we appoint someone as a select board to one person to fulfill the role of the three listers that will be a certified professional assessor that will do the traditional task of the elected listers in whole in a professional manner. Now, you, Bob, probably ask why we're at this juncture, why we propose this. Is that your question, more or less?
Yeah, well, I listed on something.
Two reasons. One, because there have been, over the course of probably a year, I would say, there have been increasing amounts of complaints in regards to how the Lister's office operates, in terms of how they assess, how they go about their job. And the other point being there has been I wouldn't call it necessarily toxic, but a difficult work environment here in the office amongst the Listers and everyone else, to put it bluntly, which has been unsolvable to this point. So this is one viable means of a solution that we propose to you all to see how you would feel about it in terms of, as I explained in the beginning, taking a path whereby instead of elected officials that are more, not that the assessor wouldn't be from the community because we would advertise for the position. It could be anyone, it could be you, if you wanted it, Bob. But, the idea of it, of them being elected would go by the wayside, and it would be an appointed position. And you'd have, whomever we appointed would be a professional certified assessor. Is that, sum it up?
Joan Rubin, I'm so sorry. This has been a concept, however.
Speak up loud.
Yeah, so this is a concept that many of the towns in the area are also entertaining. It's not just Plymouth, correct?
Yeah, it's happened in other towns, of course, yeah. It's not an original idea that we have to do it. It's just kind of,
It's an ongoing process, in terms of, other towns have, also have town managers, like, Killington, Woodstock have a town manager. It's just,
Could I add a little to that?
yeah.
I just say, one of the features of this is that it requires an assessor to have level 3 assessor training. Some of our listers have that, some of them do not. So that raises like the level of professionalism to the minimum of that level 3 assessor. And we've recently learned that the state is considering regional assessors, so this might become moot at some point. We don't know.
Tom, I have a couple comments when you're ready. Go ahead.
Let's hear somebody on the floor, and then we'll come back to you. Yeah, yes, sir.
Richard Ruggiano. I just have two questions. One, are we trying to change structure because of personalities? And two, is changing structure going to cost the town more money by going to a professional assessor versus the 3 that we had?
So now that you want to speak, maybe you can answer.
I can
those while
address
I do
that,
it.
sure. It's my understanding, Richard, that it will not cost the town any more money from the analysis that we looked at. There were 3 points I wanted to make. Some of them have already been touched on. There are 2 neighboring towns that have the same initiative on their ballot, and there's a reason for it, so you have to ask yourself why. Second point I want to make, and maybe Charlie can address this, is I have heard that Charlie has communicated to someone, and I heard it third hand, that's why I want to hear it from Charlie when he gets a chance to speak, that the state is promoting the idea and may in fact issue statute that dictates us that we're going to have an assessor down the road. So it may be prudent to look at the pool of assessors in the area and have first dibs on interviewing that. Now, the comment was made through other communications that we're going to lose local control. But I don't see how that is the case, because what would happen if this gets approved is we would advertise like we always do, we would warn it, we would take applications, we would go through an interview process, and we would make a decision based on what's best for the town of Plymouth. The control is right here with this board. That's where your local control is. If you have a problem with the Lister's office right now, you're on your own. You're going to have to battle it out with them. But with an appointed assessor, you can come to this board, and it's our responsibility to make sure things are done correctly. The last point I wanted to make was 2 out of 3 of the current listers we have in town have told me they think it's a good idea to have an assessor versus listers. So you figure it out. What does that mean? Where's that come from? That's what I'm told.
Okay, so we heard from him, now you're next.
Bruce Pauly. One of the concerns that a number of people have expressed when it comes to listers versus tax assessor is that in one case you have one voice and the other you have 3. The final situation, what it boils down to is it really doesn't matter one way or the other. If you have a problem with how your property has been taxed, you have the ability to go to the Board of Civil Authority for a final ruling on this. And there have even been cases, I can think of one, where a gentleman wasn't happy with that, and he actually went to the Supreme Court in Vermont and won there. So you have a lot of avenues of recourse that don't cost you any money at all. The Board of Civil Authority is, it's there for you in many instances.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Jay, you said that one of the requirements is a level 3 assessor. What? How is that? How are you held to that as a board? Like, is that just because the job description is written that way, or is there some?
That's a legal requirement.
That's a legal. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Town for 41 years plus, and I am very much in favor of going to not having listers and doing an assessor. I think we'll have a more broader base to pick from, and we can, like I said, there'll be applications. You know, things have changed, and a lot of towns are going towards this, and first I'm hearing about the state, but being in town for all these years, and I am part of the Board of Abatement and the Board of Civil Authority as a JP. And Bruce is right, you can come to the BCA if you have any concerns. You must go to the listers first, work it out with them. If it doesn't work out, it goes on to the other boards. And that's how the system works now, and that will continue, I'm assuming, to work that way in the future. So I'm definitely in favor.
Does anyone else have anything to say about the article, which we're not going to vote tonight, and we're going to vote by Australian ballot tomorrow? If no one has anything further, no town resident, I am going to go to Article 3. And Article 3 is to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote $13,589.50 for human services to be allocated as I read before, all A through V. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Karen Evans. Do we have a second? We have a second back there. So we have a motion and a second for Article 3. Is there any discussion of Article 3? Anybody want to weigh in on any of these human services? If there's no discussion, yes, Karen?
Is this more than we usually have? It just seemed like it was.
I don't know, but if we get to Z,
We're going to have to start a new numbering system. That's what I was thinking when I got to B anyway.
I didn't look at it.
If that's all the discussion we have on Article 3, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. I would say Article 3 is passed. Article 4, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to appropriate the sum of $2,500 to the Okemo Valley Technical Rescue Group to support emergency technical rescue services for the town of Plymouth. Do we have a motion? We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. That's the fire chief, I think. Anyone want to speak in favor, fire chief?
I'll speak in favor.
Why don't you?
So, Jim Allen, fire chief. So this basically is a human services thing. entity after the time frame in order to get into the human services aspect of the vote. For people who want to become, floodwater certified or things like that, or rope certified or things, any type of technical rescue type situations, they can go to classes. The classes are about $1,000 per person. They're, anywhere from 20 hours to 40 hours, depending on whatever class you take. So it's for that, it's for equipment, it's, to have a pool of things that we can pick from in an emergency situation that all the towns. So this is Mount Holly, Ludlow, Proctorsville, Cavendish, and Plymouth, I believe, are the five towns that so it's on everyone's town appropriations part of their ballot or whatever, however it works out. So it's a pool of money that we can all pick from and take classes and things like that. So that's what it's for.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Any other questions? Okay. Then we're going to vote Article 4 to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to appropriate the sum of $2,500 to the Yakima Valley Technical Rescue Group to support emergency technical rescue services for the town of Plymouth. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have that one too. You're doing great. Okay. Article 5. To see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to raise $1,592,689.50 in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,999,739.50. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Now, it is customary that when we have a budget article, this is your budget on the table, we ask one of the selectmen to speak first to explain as much as possible about the budget, so it may answer a lot of your questions before we start. If no one objects, we're going to do that. Go ahead.
Thank you. So to start out, some good news. We spent November, December working on our budget, and taxes have gone down $28,000 for financial year 26 over 25. The floods were significant in 2023, as we've discussed before. We had $2.1 million in damage, and our FEMA administrator, which is Cherry, and also our treasurer, has been working very diligently with the highway department, and so far we have $773,000 reimbursed to date. And you wonder, when we have $2.1 million in expenses, how are we paying the bills in Plymouth? Being down $1.3 million still, the town has funds of just over $1.8 million. Those are reserve funds and our general fund. And we've also used a little bit of borrowing from the Vermont Bond Bank at a very low rate of interest. And we also have a line of credit that we are trying not to utilize because of interest costs. So our general fund, I should qualify this, we have not had an audit. Our auditor is working on that. We'd like to have it done before town meeting. Should be done soon. But a qualified statement that our general fund currently at the end of FY24 has $852,000 in it. And our reserve funds total just over $1 million. And as we look at those reserve funds, one of them is our highway equipment fund. And if you look in the budget, you may wonder, every year, there's $130,000 transferred into this highway equipment fund. That number has been about the same for 9 or 10 years, is what I believe. In 2024, we bought a dump truck to replace one that was damaged. That was partially due to an insurance payment because of the accident, and a couple $100,000 from the equipment fund. 2025, we do not have anything scheduled for replacement. And if you look at that right-hand column, that's where the number, the balance goes up or down. In 2026, we anticipate buying a new grader and possibly a 1-ton pickup truck. Our grader is a 1980.
Yeah, pretty old.
Yeah. Somewhere around 40 years old, we think. Okay. So just know those are a couple of large expenditures that we plan, and that'll bring our reserve account down. But as we move towards 2028, we should have sufficient funding to replace the next dump truck in line. So we're looking at 3 years out. This pie chart, again, I've showed you something similar before. The gold colored section of the pie is your local school tax over in Woodstock. The blue section of the pie is the town tax. And the green section of the pie is what goes to Montpelier. And we've been concerned about taxes, especially what's going to the state. Assessments are higher here because we're between two ski resorts. We've made a couple calls, one to Charlie and also Senator Clarkson. And Charlie is here tonight and willing to answer some of the questions and about some of the work that they're doing up in Montpelier to try to change things and help improve the situation for us. And my last slide, this is a question from last year. And if you had a home assessed at about $400,000 in Plymouth, somebody said, what would happen if you took $100,000 off the municipal budget? So your $400,000 home, your local tax, municipal tax would be about $2,600. Your state tax is $8,900. And if we took $100,000 off our $1.6 million tax levy, your new tax bill would be $168 less. So just to give you an idea of how municipal taxes impact your overall tax bill.
Thank you, Jay. Any discussion of the budget? Maybe that answers some questions. Maybe it begot some more. Yes, sir.
I had a question, I think it was the last slide, the one before, when you had your pie chart, the text was so small, I still don't know what's what up there.
Yeah.
I wasn't following.
Get that slide back up for you. Maybe. There you go. So the town tax represents, that's the blue chunk of pie is town tax, that's 28% of your tax bill. The school tax over Woodstock is 23%, and then the green slice is what goes to the state education fund, and that's 49%.
And just for the record, this budget article is talking about the blue. That's what we're discussing here at this point. Yes, sir, in the back. Speak loudly. If you're loud, it's okay.
What's that?
If you're loud, it's okay.
I would like to register a complaint about the grader. You stated it was old at 40 years. I think 40 years is not old. That's all.
May I speak to that? Brandon, it becomes old when you start running high maintenance costs, which we've started to incur.
Are you saying humans and machines are
Oh, I'm sorry. I took it personal, I'm sorry.
Well done. Yes.
Just a comment, as a relatively new resident in Plymouth, this is the first time I've ever seen taxes go down in any place that I've been part of, so thank you for that.
Nice work, boys.
We've talked about it before.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct? Picture it off the screen.
I'll get it back for you.
Am I correct in saying that 3/4 of that pie is going to education?
It is.
You're correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Split up to Woodstock and state.
72%.
The union, this means the union, the mountain views and state tax.
Okay. If you got something to say, you got to say it to all of us. Yes, sir?
So the 1 million that you're talking about is just that blue piece of the pie?
That is correct.
We still have to pay all the rest, too.
Oh, yes.
That's the guy in the back there.
Okay. If there's no further reasonable discussion on Article 5, we are going to vote to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will vote to raise $1,592,689.50 in taxes to pay estimated expenses in the amount of $1,999,739.50. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have that. Thank you very much. You passed your budget better than a lot of years. Okay. Article 6, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will fix the salaries of the select board the same as last year in the amount of $1,600 annually. Do we have a motion? We have a motion, and we have a second. Any discussion on Article 6? Last year you gave him a raise. What? Excuse me? Now stop it.
Wow. Here's $2 million. You guys are good. We'll give you $3 an hour.
All right. Anyway, sometimes it feels like you can't pay these guys enough for what they do. But I think that everybody agrees that sounds fair to them. All those in favor of Article 6, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Remarkable. Okay. Wonderful. Article 7, to see if the legal voters of the town of Plymouth will collect taxes on real property in installments, taxes to be paid to the treasurer, town of Plymouth on September 2nd, 2025, and February 2nd, 2026, and must be delivered to the town treasurer on or before the due date. Postmarked envelopes payments will not be accepted as timely payments. Do we have a motion? Wait a second, Karen. Let somebody else do the heavy lifting. We got a motion here. Second? Second. Any discussion of Article 7? Any discussion? Excuse me? Okay.
I'm confused. I don't know what that means.
You want the article explained?
What? Yeah.
Okay. When do you guys explain the article? They're just saying you collect taxes in two payments.
Yeah, just bifurcate a tax bill, one payment due, it's in summer, one's due in winter.
February?
February. Postmark. It's not.
No. It's been like that forever. That's what it already is.
It could be all one bill.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. you could
Rather
pay
than
it all.
diverge
You can
into
do
a bunch
whatever
of side arguments, let's talk about Article 7. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Remarkable, you're a wonderful town. I'm going to open other business. Before I open other business, I'm going to ask you not to get up, because when we're done with other business, we have Charlie Kimball, our representative, and we're going to pay attention and be real nice to him for at least 10 minutes so he can tell us what the hell's going on in Montpelier. But right now, I'm going to do the Article 8, which we don't see here, which is other business. And under other business, this is a town that doesn't get together very often. There's over 50 people in this room. We don't usually have a crowd like that. Is there anything you'd like to tell your neighbors, discuss, any public service announcements?
Tom?
Yes, sir.
I have to say, Tom, it's a shame in this town that we don't have a speaker system. I talk loud, but the talking in here is too soft. And I like a system where you can hear things.
So if I lose my voice, which is starting to go, would you take over?
Next year meeting, can we have a new sound system in here so it's at least as loud as my voice?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion for a new sound system. We got a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. I think you heard it. There's no no's here. Yes?
Just as an aside to that, those microphones aren't hooked to any speakers in here. They're going to the TV for the recording.
And for us, it's just a placebo, right?
This other microphone that we've been passing around isn't doing a thing either.
Yes, sir.
We have a 3-minute video from the students of the high school, or the school over in Woodstock, Mountain Valley. Can we play that?
That's other business, man. Let's go for it.
Okay. It's under 3 minutes. Yeah, it's going to be on
No
Zoom.
one objects. I mean, we're paying for the kids. We might as well see what they have to say. Yes?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Kat, and while Jay gets that I think when we see that pie chart up there, it's really easy for our eyes to go very big and for us to just look at the school budget with numbers. And I think it's really easy to feel disconnected from the students. And I think 10 district employees who live in Plymouth. And so I just surveyed a couple of kids and say, tell me what you like about school so that you can feel a little bit more connected to some of the kids who are benefiting from that giant number that you're going to vote on tomorrow. So thank you.
Uh-oh.
Sound.
That should make you using the town microphone.
Uh-oh. I don't. Yes, it's all.
Yes, yes.
That's.
I turned my sound off.
board directors. Thank you. Elliot Rubin with the school. Tell you about the handout that we have over there that basically is a school report from this year, and it tells you about the budget, and it tells you about everything that's happening at all the schools, but to be honest with you, you can't follow what the students are doing, and that's really what it's all about. So I want to congratulate. Terrific. Okay, before I end the meeting and before Charlie speaks, I should mention, I've been doing this 27 years. You know how I started? In November of 1997, John Wheeler pulled into my driveway. Anybody remember John? He says, Tom? He says, I've been town, you remember John, I've been town moderator for 28 years. There's too many meetings, all these Act 60 meetings. He says, I can't take it anymore, my legs is giving out. He says, I'm not gonna run. And then he turns to me and he says, we want you to run. Then he stops and he says, not that we think you'd be any good at it, but there's some other people we don't want to get the job. Now, I bring this up because I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm on the ballot tomorrow. I'm not running or anything, but I'm just telling you. And if you want me to continue, I will continue. But if there's and he was smart enough, I think, to tap me when I was in my 40s. So I could spend 5 or 10 years getting decent at this so we could have a good time at this meeting. So if there's anybody in town, and I don't mean to be age discriminate, but it doesn't make any sense breaking somebody in who's 60 or 70 because by the time you're good at it, you're not going to be around anymore. If there's anybody in the town who's interested in the job, come see me, give me a call. You know, I'd be happy to tell you the ins and outs of it. You don't get to vote. Your opinion doesn't count, okay? We just try to be fair. And that's all I'm going to say. Is there anything else before we get to our legislature, Charlie Kimball? Okay, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, but don't get up. Meeting adjourned. Charlie? Speak into the mic.
This one?
Talk loud.
Charlie, just talk loud, we'll hear you.
Now it's green. Now it's green. How's that? I'm going to talk loud enough for Bob to hear me. All right. Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. My name is Charlie Kimball. I'm the state representative. I represent Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth. So I have been here many occasions talking about a variety of things, from the legalization of cannabis to property taxes. So why don't we start talking about property taxes? So I ran on a platform of 3 different things when I was looking at getting elected this year. One was to look at changing how we fund education. Second is to find out how we can find money to build a new school for the Woodstock School District. Third was to help communities deal with flood occurrences and the more frequent storm events. And fourth is actually, I said 3, but there are 4, is looking at affordable housing, access to housing. So within that context, I want to talk to you about one of the things you just talked about today, which is listers. And how do you assess properties and how is part of the grand list. Now, there was a law passed in 2023. It's called Act 68 of 2023. That said we have to do a better job of assessing properties across the state because there is inconsistency in how we do that job across different towns and communities. Right now, there are 129 communities that do not have current appraised grand lists. So that's a lot. That's 129. And there's another 29, they have appraisals scheduled, and the last one to be finished is in 2030. So, and there are another 29 towns that have to have their properties reappraised, and the first available date from those firms that do the big appraisals
is 2030. So the problem is that the average age of appraisals in the state of Vermont is 2016. So that's what the legislature was trying to address, commissioned the Department of Taxes and the Property Valuation and Review Department to come up with a statewide appraisal system. They made a recommendation in December of 2024, and we got that report and had a meeting of some of the listers. Natalia came to that meeting. The listers from Reading came and Woodstock to figure out, what's your thoughts on this? What do you think? They recommended creating assessment districts. There would be about 12 across the state. That's a lot different than what we have now, where every town is doing their own appraisals. Every town is about 1,300 parcels, and they're thinking that going to about 10,000 parcels is a better way to do a scientific assessment of property values. So that was one thought. And then making them all professional at a regional level. So what you're talking about now is creating listers to assessors at a local level is somewhere in between those two. And Woodstock, yes, just voted to change from listers to assessors. Reading tomorrow is voting on that subject. And so I don't know how many ballots it's on, but it is very common. So it is not just Plymouth alone. We ask a lot of our listers. It's no more than just counting sheep back in the day. We ask them to do very technical work with appraising properties, and it's not simple work, especially when that is the most valuable thing to calculate education taxes, which is a segue into education taxes. Right now, we pay about 68% of the education taxes, $2.3 billion budget, from property taxes. And if you look at what the source of that money is, you know, you've got both the homestead and the non-homestead, only two categories in property taxes to pay for the property tax portion of the bill. And there is a desire to be able to tax second homes different than primary homes. In the current system, you're not able to do it. So part of the reform is to be able to give the state the ability to tax properties at different rates as to how they're used. So, and part of that is making sure that the system is consistent across every town. So that's part of what is being proposed and considered at the state level. I'm on the Committee on Ways and Means in the House, which is where I want it to be because we're dealing with some of these complex issues around education financing. But we're dealing with this one in particular, is how do we look at valuing the grand list and raising money for education. Third issue is property tax relief. What are we doing about it? Because we had a huge increase last year. This year it's going up again, maybe. The school board, I have to give them a lot of credit for working hard to cut things out of their budget and make it so it was a reasonable increase. It's not easy work, and if you paid attention to the news, you saw where a lot of parents came out to object to some of the programs being cut. It's not an easy job. So property tax relief, the commission, I'm giving you way too much information, just tell me if it's too much. All right. The Commission on the Future of Public Education was created last year, and part of one of their recommendations was supposed to come back in December with some cost containment recommendations. So this is a statewide organization, representations from public and private schools, school boards, everything. And they came back in December and said, you know what, we can't really give any recommendations to the legislature because you can't save money unless you affect the organization of schools, the governance, and the delivery. So we're not going to give you anything specific. Like, okay, great. So then we're going to get into the fourth area, yes, which is the governor made a proposal for education transformation. Now, you might have heard about this in the news. It's huge. It's seismic. It's nothing short of, whoa. So the first thing is on governance. Right now, we have 52 supervisory unions and 119 school districts for a state with 83,000 students. The proposal is to eliminate supervisory unions and go to 5 school districts across the state. Now that's a huge change. Do you remember when we went through Act 46? That was painful, right? And that was just much smaller. So this is a magnitude that's much, much larger, going to these 5 school districts where there'd be 5 elected school board members representing 10,000, 34,000 students. It all depends. So that was one thing, and that's working its way through. If we only dealt with that alone in the legislature this year, that would be huge and take years. The second proposal is looking at how we change how we fund education. Fund meaning how we allocate money to the schools. It's recommending that instead of what we do now, where we have local school budgets developed by a school board and voted on by voters to determine what you need to run your school system, instead it would be the state saying, based on the profile of your students and what we know it costs to run a school system, here's what you get. Now, that's a very simplified way to tell you, but it's looking at your pupil count, looking at what the calculations are about the average cost of educating a student that doesn't need additional instruction or facilities, and that's the base amount. Then you add weights to that for the students that do need that additional instruction or facilities, and then you get your number. So that base amount right now is $13,200 is what the governor's proposed. Right now at the school level, on average, it's well over $20,000 per student that we're spending on public education. And at the CTE level, career and technical education, is about 25. So to give you an idea of where we are, I remember asking people, do you know what we spend? They're like, I don't know, 10,000? It's like, no. It's a lot more money. So remember, it's $2.3 billion that we're spending on 83,000 kids. So I forgot. But anyway, the next part is then the cost savings, right? So the estimated cost savings that the governor said, this is going to save you $183 million. Like, show me. So we're in the process of digging into the numbers to figure out, oh, that sounds nice, but where are you going to get the money? So they're using a prototypical school system of 3,900 students, 4 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, in this imaginary environment, and basing their numbers on that. So what that means is that you have a staff to student ratio of 8.8 in their configuration. That's teachers, that's support staff, that's everyone. Right now in Vermont, we have a staff to student ratio of 4.38 staff to student ratio. So if you think about it, that is going to half as many people working in our school system as we have now. There's no way we can make that transformation on a straight line basis. There has to be a lot more that goes into that. How are we going to organize our classrooms? Minimum class sizes have to go up. Can you do that in your existing school system? No. Do you need to build new schools? Yes. Where? I don't know. So that whole process of just figuring out what schools are prioritized and where they are is a big deal. So that is not something we can solve in a day or 2 days, but it's going to, what we expect at the end of this legislative session is to have a plan. And that is to have a plan to see, yes, the foundation formula might be elegant. It's a good way for school boards to budget because you know what you're trying to get to. Instead of having to constantly say, so the state has what for a yield? If anybody can explain to me how this education funding gets figured, let's talk later, have a beer, I'll buy a beer, it would be great. But so we have to find out if the base rate is right. And that's the most important thing we have to do. And I think we will get there. And we will have a transformation plan. Part of it may actually be good because a hub school, a regional high school, may benefit this area well. Because part of it is going to be also bringing in some state funding for new school construction and renovation. So the Woodstock school system could be very well positioned with that. If you draw a pin around 30 miles from the center of where that school is now, it could incorporate Hartford, Windsor, Killington as it does now, and a greater area. So it could actually benefit what we have as a magnet school. Now, is that set in stone? God, no. But if things keep going the way they're going, that could very well happen. So that is a lot. We got the governor's bill last Wednesday. It's 176 pages long. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but so there are a lot of details that have to be worked on this. My goal is to make sure that what you have is an understanding of a plan at the end of this legislative session, which isn't going to be until mid-June this year. Oh yeah, property tax relief, sorry. In the short run, for this year and next year, it looks like what we're going to do is use some of the general fund monies. There's education fund, general fund, transportation fund. And from that, buy down the property tax rates, at least this year and possibly next year. Now that is, you've got a question.
Well, I have a question as to the common level of appraisal.
Yes.
So we had quite a bubble during COVID where things went quite a bit up because people were moving in and that ship has sailed. Okay, what about getting our common level appraisal back to something more reasonable? Property value's probably gone down 10 or 20% since they did that.
So that one's when we go back to your system of appraising. That's where you go back to your system of appraising to make sure that is the trend, is it a blip? You don't want to go chasing sales.
So we've had a problem, well, chasing sales. When I first moved here, we had a problem with getting comps because you wanted a comp for a household in Plymouth, you had to go to Reading.
Yep.
Or you had to go up to Rochester because nothing ever sold. Now
Yep.
all of a sudden you have all these houses selling to second homeowners, and by the way, that ship has sailed. They've all stopped buying, and they can't sell those properties at what they bought them for. They're down. Shouldn't the common level of appraisal, which is not done by assessors, it's done by the state, shouldn't that be automatically adjusted?
Yes, it should be. The appraised value of your grand list should affect market conditions. So, and that's where you're talking about putting in a better system of appraising. So this part of the bill is to make sure you're assessed once every 6 years as a minimum. Right now I don't think there is a minimum, unless the coefficient of dispersion is a certain thing, and also, yeah, the properties fall out. Elliot? Yeah.
When this thing was first announced, there was a caveat that local communities can decide to raise some more money if there wasn't enough. So aren't we going to be sort of back in the same spot where?
Are you talking about the foundation formula? Yeah. Yes. So other states, this is not a new concept. Foundation formula has been around since 1905, and there are currently 36 states that use this way of funding education. So there's a proposal to say that it would give a school district the ability to raise money locally, as you can call it a local options budget. That's what they call it in Kansas. You can call it where I'm trying to come up with the right term, because what they have right now is state education spending tax. It's awful. It's hard to understand what it is. Anyway, so the governor has proposed that it gives the towns the opportunity or school districts raise more money than what the base is. So then you get into a couple of problems then. Is there equity in that? Because some school districts have an easier time raising money because they have a bigger grand list. So you end up with unequal opportunities. So there's a couple of proposals on that, putting a cap on what can be raised on a local basis, or maybe there's a revenue share with a different school district. It does there are two things about it which are actually kind of good. One is, do you always trust the state to do the right thing? Maybe not. So if the state isn't going to spend enough to support what it costs to run a local education system, maybe you want the ability to raise additional money, and you want to do that locally. The second thing, it gives you more ability to control what that education program looks like locally. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
You said 83,000 students?
Yes.
How many of those go to private schools?
3,500.
So you're roughly
5%.
$7,000 a student? 2.3 billion?
Oh, if you look at it that way. I don't have I can't do math in public. Yeah. Fair question. Yep. So we're not the highest. New York is higher than we are. So, and where we are in outcomes is, I know that we're in the top 10. We used to be maybe 4 or 5. We slipped a little bit. And some of that is COVID related. And so it's really hard to get a common assessment. because of COVID. So I can't tell you exactly. I'm not sure where we are relative to from one state to another.
So we're one of the highest taxed
Yes. We're spending,
out of all the states,
yep.
with roughly 80,000 students.
So here's the thing, is that our system of education in Vermont has evolved over a couple hundred years. And it is where we are now. And we have had a lot of very small schools continue to be open. It's been a priority of people in the state to have small local schools. Other states have consolidated on a faster basis. So it is really a function of how we have decided to educate our kids.
Charlie, question for you?
Yeah.
So it sounds like a little bit of a one-size-fits-all. This is an expensive place to live. How do we attract and retain teaching staff? Just a question as you go down that road with the other lawmakers, maybe.
Yeah, so the question is, how do we attract and retain a qualified teaching staff? I don't know, could the teachers in the room say, how do you do that? I mean, really the most important asset you have in a school system is the people in front of the classroom. And working. Affordable housing, right? It all comes back to housing. All feeds in on one another.
It's just, I have people coming into the store on a daily basis, angry as hell about this.
Yeah.
And a lot of elderly people are losing their homes because, there's been talk about, well, somebody over 60 should pay education tax. It's probably a good thing to do. They paid into the system, they don't have children, why make them pay the taxes? I understand about this new school, but the fact of the matter is, people are losing their homes left and right.
Yeah.
Plymouth's a key example of it, like Tom was saying. It's not sustainable, Charlie. And you've got to get property tax relief drastically. I mean, we can't do it anymore. It's killing people.
Well, here's,
So Charlie, I'm going to give you 5 more minutes to wrap it up, only because I know nobody's going to be disrespectful, but you've been out here 20 minutes.
I know, thank you very much.
Keep going, but don't go forever. Big question.
It's a philosophy of taxes that those that have the ability to pay should pay, and those that can't shouldn't. All right, so it depends on how you think about it. But just because someone has a property that's worth X amount of dollars doesn't mean that they have the cash flow to pay higher taxes on the value of that property. So how do we create a system that recognizes that? We've been trying to create a system in Vermont that's very progressive with the property tax credits. It's very complicated to administer, and it doesn't always give someone enough relief because their property value may have increased substantially from when they bought it through no fault of their own because the market has increased. So now you have a property that's up here, value up here, and your taxes follow it. But that's how we've chosen to pay for schools. So other states have gone to an income-based way to pay for education. Hawaii does that. But that means that we're going to have to increase income taxes somewhere in order to pay for that. Is that more fair? Is it going to attract industry to do it? So it's really hard. Can you grow the pie? Can you grow the economy? That's one of the other arguments, in order to have more people paying into the same bucket of expenses. That would lower everybody's bill and give you some good assets. So I'm not sharing with you a solution. I'm just saying as we deal with these taxing questions, that's the kind of stuff that we're dealing with every day. To think, what's fair? Like a homestead credit. Should we have primary homeowners have a credit against their taxes? And does that make it easier to administer? Okay, sure. Right now we have $153 million is what we have for a homestead property tax credit. And so if you eliminated that, what would that do? Well, that would make people a lot more careful about their property taxes, but overall taxes would go down, but not substantially. We just ran the numbers last week. It's like it doesn't make that much of a difference. So it's about how can we deliver meaningful reform, is reining in some of those expenses and maybe finding other ways to pay for those things. Yes, Bruce.
I think what you just said at the end is the real answer, other ways to pay for things. The thing neighboring states, New Hampshire, New York, there's an awful lot of business, they're not suffering the way we are with overtaxation of homeowners.
Yep.
That's what you should be looking at, is how to attract business and maybe have business zones, whatever it takes, because I know you want to keep the rural aspect of Vermont. It's very important.
Right.
But at the same time, there's not enough money in it.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for the time. I mean, it's, and I'm representing you. I'm not trying to explain to you what the government's doing. All right, so.
You answer the phone, don't you?
I do answer the phone.
You can call him anytime, he's a great representative.
My phone number is in the Vermont Standard, and also my email address is too. So please reach out to me with what your concerns are. And I will get back to you. It may not be at that moment, but I will get back to you. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. It's always a pleasure. This thing doesn't work. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We'll see you next year.
Peace.